Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the second day of the Net Zero with Social Science Forum. Please take a seat. We're about to start. Okay, so we hope everyone got a good rest yesterday evening and is eager to start a new round of inspirations, deep discussions, and maybe new connections. So to jumpstart the second and final day of this event, please welcome Lila Zhong, CEO of Taiwan Sustainability Hub, to the stage.
All right, good morning, everyone. Okay, thank you. Thank you all for coming here for the second day of the forum, and especially I would like to thank all of our guests from Germany and then also from Brazil to be here with us for this whole week. So one of the things that I've learned so far it's the engagement that we have at our forum, and then this reminds me of the first day when Dr. Rain talked about the narratives and how important it is, and also how important to engage the actor and be a part of the actor. And that's also something that TSH really want to do, to engage the community and also to bring everyone together in a safe platform to share their ideas, their knowledge, their thoughts. So yeah, before we go into the second day of forum, I really would like to have everyone to thank our colleagues, our staff here, to make sure everything goes smoothly for the 2 days event. So please give them a round of applause. Thank you all. Yeah. All right. So as for today, we have a full day of schedule. We have a workshop coming in, and then we also have 2 panel sessions. So I really wish everybody will have a really fulfilling days ahead of you, and then let us know if you need any support, if you have any question, and if you have any reflection you want to share with us. So, all right, thank you.
Okay, so for the first session of the day, we are going to have a 2-hour workshop designed and led by Dr. Jo-Ting, Huang-Lachmann, and Dr. Rodrigo, Valencia, Cotera of Climate Service Center, Germany. This session is moderated by Professor Wang from National Cheng University. She's also a member of the TSH Steering Committee. So please welcome Professor Wang to the stage.
Thank you, Ria. So good morning again. So it's my great honor to be here. I'm not the moderator of this session, I would say. I'm actually just do the introduction to introduce our moderators for this workshop. But before I do so, I want to mention that earlier this year, I was in Germany for a couple of months, and I had the privilege to visit Garrix for a couple of times. And I remember there's a wall in their center showing the world map, and with the magnets pointing out the places where Garrix have the collaborations with. And next to it, there are the stickers showing the good comments, words from the collaborators, like the good quality of the data services and how they benefit from the co-creating processes. And I was amazed. And there's another wall pretty much documenting the exercises of co-creating the climate services, which I believe will be what we are going to do today. And if you still remember yesterday from Daniela's keynote, there's a slide showing this like up and down like curve for the knowledge transfer and technology transfer. And again, that is exactly what we're going to do, right? If I'm wrong, I'm not wrong, okay? So with these processes and also the visits to the Garrix, I got the opportunities to interact with some of the colleagues there. And I learned that how we be patient in engaging the stakeholders in the processes, in aiming at the same like goal for knowledge and technology transfer matters to all. So I believe in the next 2 hours, we will be enjoying these processes and learn from it. And before doing so, please allow me to introduce our 2 experienced scientists from Garrix. And one is Huang-Lachmann 博士. So she is very interdisciplinary. And from my conversations with her, she's now the research group leader of a research project funded by, well, the BMB is the Ministry of Education and Research, right, in Germany. So for co-creating the climate services for caring society, and that is a very important project. And I got to join one of their research project discussions where the climate gaming is the focus for engaging the stakeholders, which I learned a lot. But Jo-Ting will be bringing her knowledge and her experiences in facilitating the next 2 hours. And together with Rodrigo, Valencia, Cotera. So I had a conversation with him yesterday, we just met yesterday. And I learned that he has so broad background, like from mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, like environmental sciences. And I believe his focus right now is to figuring out the social acceptance of the air quality, something like, the technology, the capture technology, something like that, which is very important because for all new technology, what's the social acceptance? So it's not just like a word, social acceptance. It's a process to really delineating all the dynamics. So I think with their facilitating, we will have fun for the next 2 hours. So since it's a workshop, meaning that you cannot just watch your laptop sitting there, you should be moving around, but please join me to welcome them, for them to facilitate us here together for the wonderful discussion. So please.
Thank you so much for this introduction. So dear colleagues, we are really happy to be here. First of all, we want to thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for the invitation to the Taiwan Sustainability Hub. Today, we are going to do a workshop, and we're going to go over the process of creation of climate services. The workshop is going to be divided into 3 sections. So in the first part, we're just going to talk about the Climate Service Center Germany, what do we do, what are our goals and our aims, and then we're going to move on into climate services. What exactly is a climate service? And then we're going to divide into groups of 8 or 10, and we're going to go over the process of doing a climate service yourselves. So let me go into the stage. Thank you. Okay, so the Climate Service Center Germany was initiated in 2009, and this was an initiative of the German federal government as the strategy for climate change adaptation. And we are part of the Helmholtz organization, which is an organization of German research institutes, and we belong to the Helmholtz Zentrum Herion. You can call it also Herion for short. We are based in Chile House in the city center of Hamburg, and our director is the Professor Dr. Daniela Jacob. We yesterday heard a talk of our director, and today we're going to touch some of the topics that she mentioned yesterday during the workshop and also during the discussion later on. We're an interdisciplinary team of natural scientists and social economists, social scientists, and we've been trying over the last 14 years to work together and integrate knowledge and create projects that have both natural sciences and social sciences together for knowledge integration. We're approximately 80 staff members, not only from Germany, but from all around the world. So the goal of the Climate Service Center Germany is to create products that translate science into knowledge for stakeholders. And why do we do this? We do it for stakeholders to be able to take better decisions and better adapt to climate change. So we're practice-oriented, and we do also validation with stakeholders. This means that our processes start with stakeholders, move also into validation with stakeholders, and in the end, they should also return to stakeholders. So this is a process in which we not only do the science from one side, but we are always in contact with stakeholders to understand their needs, to understand if they can use this information, and in the end, this information comes back to the stakeholders. This image, you saw it yesterday. It was presented by our director, Professor Dr. Daniela Jacob, and clarifies exactly what I was trying to explain right now. This is the process of creating a climate service. And on one side, you have GERIX, which is on the lower side, so climate research, and the user on top. And the idea is that during the process, we move, as I mentioned, from stakeholders to science and back. So it's practice-oriented on one side, which is the stakeholders, and we do the science knowledge. And within this process, we do a continuous evaluation, and we end up with services and technology transfer. So for the second part, I would like to invite my colleague, Dr. Jo-Ting, Huang-Lachmann.
Thank you, Rodrigo, for the opening. And then if you are asking us, so for example, I'm doing different kind of different kind of climate change, then I want to do stakeholder engagement. 1 year of public hearing, does it count as stakeholder? Or I do constant interview, does it count as stakeholder? We would say there are different levels of stakeholder engagement. And we call them sometimes users because we expect they will use our end product. It could be the policy advisory, it could be any kind of the information that we hope that they could take up and to co-develop with us. So if you have the end product that you're just trying to inform them as a policy brief, as a paper, as a visualization, you are at the information level. Sometimes you would like to have more than that, so you are constantly in the consultation process with them. So what would be their demands, and then you are creating your product, targeting on meeting their demands, then you are at the consultation level. But maybe you want to have constant dialogue with them. From the beginning, when you shape your research question, and also to pick the right methodology to assess the adaptation and mitigation measures that they need, then you are in the dialogue process. But how about something that moves to upper level? It's partnership. So from the beginning, you are treating your users, especially the one from the societal stakeholders, such as communities and citizens. You invite them to participate and co-develop these climate services from the beginning with you. Then you are at a partnership level. Then many of you are coming from different backgrounds, and we got this question a lot. I'm doing modeling for climate change. I'm doing weather forecasting. I'm doing stakeholder engagement as social scientist. So am I part of this climate services? So climate service definition is actually really, really broad. So you could go from the observation and the IT infrastructure side doing pure Earth system modeling, but you can also continue to couple your model to the more local climate information, targeting on a local level, engaging their local knowledge. So you can do regional downscaling coupled with your impact model, also coupled with your social economic models. But you could also be a pure scientist that you are doing pure dialogue and partnership. Then you are in this consulting services, part of the climate services. Or you are directly having dialogue with a governmental or public users, or could be also companies, to make sure that the user communities are not just taking up, but to co-develop these climate services with you. So no matter where you see yourself in this chain, you are all part of this climate services process. And that's the key that we want to do the workshop today with you, that we first would like you to identify yourself. If you can see yourself in this map, where will you stand? You can also be a little bit more interdisciplinary. You can also go from the natural science side, but because you engage stakeholders from the beginning, so you are also bridging towards the consulting services. And please remember, no matter where you are, the most important element would be that you engage the stakeholder from the beginning when you identify your questions, especially your research question and the problem you want to solve with and for the society. And you have to make sure the channel is open, that no matter which process you are in a development, stakeholders, they are allowed and invited to join your participatory process the whole time in the whole process. And this is the exercise we would like to do today. And first, we would like to ask you a question. Please have a look at this map again, and then try to pinpoint one or two where you are in this climate service process development. So have you all found your spot? Those who have found your spot, can you raise your hand? There are not so many hands. 1, 2, 3. I would say, thank you, a little bit less than 50%. We will go to you later on during the exercise to ask you the question again, and you have to draw a dot for us. And now we would like to do this workshop with you. Let's form a group, roughly 10 people, and then each one of you have the same task. Please develop climate services for net zero, for transforming society. And we know some of you already got a project for the net zero with social sciences. So if you are in the group, please feel free to take the topic of your project, because then we would like to go through a step with you, how to develop climate service steps for targeting on the net zero society. And later on in the group, we invite you to go through the steps. You will get a map of this climate service development process, and then you just make sure that you develop your own steps. And the steps can be tailored designed to the problem you want to solve for the society with the topic of your project. So first you have to do is identify the problem you would like to solve with and in the society. And then how would you communicate with your colleagues? We mean that in your group, you might have both natural scientists and social scientists, or they're just different disciplines. And how would you communicate with your colleague what you actually want to do, what kind of product you want to develop? And then please consider all the steps that I just showed you in this climate change, climate service roadmap developed in EU, partly developed by us. And then later on when you present, we will ask you every step, why did you plan those steps? What's the reason behind it? What's the goal you want to achieve with the society and in a society? And then please make sure you include the stakeholder from the beginning and in the whole process of this climate service development process. Okay, I will give my microphone to Rodrigo. Maybe I didn't make something clear or I forgot something.
Don't worry if in the beginning everything looks very new, or if you don't know in which part of the climate services roadmap you are. That's exactly what we're going to do today. So if you can start finding your group, 8 to 10 people, we're going to start the discussion. We're going to hand out also the climate services roadmap, so you're going to be able to have it in paper. And the first task of the knowledge exchange that we're going to do right now is to tell your colleagues, where do you see yourself in this chain? And this is very important for the rest of the people, so they can understand what kind of information and how can you support the decision-making process. And as it was mentioned, it was very important to remember to have stakeholder engagement since the beginning. Why? Because we need to understand first what's needed, what type of information do stakeholders need to better adapt to climate change. And in some cases, it is also possible that the stakeholder doesn't even know what type of information they need, and that's something we need to discuss. So maybe we can, I think there's one question over there? Oh no, oh no, sorry. Okay, so maybe we can start with the process, and as we move along, we can answer the questions. We will be here, we will be moving around, and if there's some comments, we're gonna also announce it in the microphone. And for our online colleagues, during this time, because you cannot exchange with colleagues, we're gonna send you the link of the climate services roadmap. So in the meanwhile, you can spend some time, which is around 50 minutes, to read the climate services roadmap, to understand what exactly is a climate service, how are they developed, and also where you can fit to support the climate services development. So please, let's move on and let's start creating our groups. Don't be shy, and let's exchange.
I have a question to you. Does anyone have any question about this roadmap? Is there any part that is not so clear? Don't be shy. The spots. You cannot find yourself. You cannot read it. We actually print them out, so you can have it in front of you. Yeah. Yeah, we thought about it in advance. Yeah, so we will right now go basically between the groups and then to explain to you. So now then you will have those posters and then we will go to you. Maybe then you can read and then we have the, yeah. So then we need you to divide yourself, like 10 people in a group, and then you are going to find basically the problem you want to solve. And we recommend that you pick the topic of your funded project if you have one. And then you can develop the steps, how you reach the society, basically, to solve the problem in society, and who will be your users, which target group are you targeting on, and how to be there with this process.
Okay, so the time for the exercise is over. And we're gonna start with the second part of this workshop. So please stay in your groups, because we're gonna continue the discussion. Stay in your groups, and we're gonna ask for one group who wants to volunteer to present their process. So please, may I ask your attention, please? Stay in your groups, please, and because, yeah, it's important to stay in the groups because we're going to continue with the discussion as we go along. So we would like to ask for one group who would like to present. So we just need one group, and remember that don't be shy. It's okay. This is a process, and it shouldn't be perfect at the first time. And that's where we're going to have the discussion. So please, if you prepared something, we welcome you on the stage to share it with your colleagues. You want to present? Yeah, please.
So you are welcome to choose any format you would like to present. Of course, you can do it pure verbally, or you have a poster, you have presentation slide, or you have notes, points.
It seems like we have a poster. And we'll have that projected in.
Yeah. So they are going to project for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, is that right? Okay, yeah.
Then while we are waiting, you can first, before you describe the step, you can first give us the background information. What's the topic of your project that you select?
Yes.
Yeah, and then you can wait until they show it. Oh, okay. Then you can start when you go through the steps. So.
I think they are preparing for the photos. So what we have today is, this is probably a little bit too small, but the problem that we ID'd is a lack of processes or engagement processes in identifying problems with stakeholders, and especially in government project processes, when scientists identify a problem, and there are no stakeholders that got involved. And so we talk about a lot of ideas on our left-hand side. We talk about there are sometimes lack of motivations of changes. Sometimes we don't have much evidence, or sometimes we didn't present enough evidence or potential projection of impacts of changes. And then we went into either that a top-down approach that we have with 20 gigawatts of solar panels in Taiwan, right now. And if that's appropriate, is that what we want in the long run? Is that what we want to continue with the top-down approach as we go into 2050? And so then we talk about how do we trade off within these resources, land resources, energy resources, fuel resources, the fuel type that we want to choose. And so we then come up with agreement on, we think that people's need understanding and trust in identifying a problem. And that actually brings up two questions on our right-hand side. Oops. Ooh. Yeah, that works. And so we think that open communication process in setting up renewable energy or other goals are very important. And we think that we want to approach problems behind problems. And that means that the goal of 20 gigawatt of solar panels is not what we really need. What we really need is energy security that in a sustainable way and for a long run for land use, for energy systems, for economy and for industry, for development or the different types of growth. And so, but also we have to recognize that coming up with these consensus are time-consuming and it takes a lot of schedule setting. And so how do we encourage engagement is really important. And so then, we landed on that we think that we might not need consensus all the time. And coming up with consensus sometimes mean that we have to fight with each other, to fight for our own interests or fight for someone's interests. And we think that trust, having trust with each other while that not coming up with mutual agreement, which we could call coexistence or 共生 maybe in Mandarin, would be something more practical. So it's not a win-zero situation. We want to create a win-win or a partial compromisation type of conversation, and to relieve the anxiety and pressure on people. So what we landed on steps is that we think that we have to get the science right. That's on the one hand. But on the other hand, that we want to have science that is science of relevance. And so that means that something that people can understand and something that people can feel that they are encouraged to be active when they have a science of or knowledge of relevance yep. And so then, we think that continuing with, for the conclusion, we think that continuing with open communication in government process, in science research projects, and on a community and neighborhood level is a key to what we want to do. Yeah, I think I guess that covered what we have.
Thank you.
Stay where you are.
Okay, stay where.
So I want to invite the other three groups. Do you have questions? You also went through the similar process or the steps discussing the topic, the problem you want to solve with society, and then you try to develop the steps. Did you see something that they miss maybe? That you maybe have more steps? Or did you see some differences or similarities? Or do you have just purely questions? Don't be shy. So I can, yeah, sure.
What do you think? Sorry. I'm just curious. How do you feel after this 50 minutes dialogue? What do you think it will help in terms of our chaotic situation?
What would help is continue of doing what we are doing today.
And I guess that I think for myself, I think in science projects or in government projects, and I'm not talking to MT right now, but no, I'm not trying to. But I think these problems are usually not participatory or not participated. People didn't really participate in problem settings, and I think that's one of the big questions that I learned out of this today.
Okay, if what we are doing is the answer, personally, I do have a further question. Why our government agencies like Ministry of Economic Affairs or the Energy Bureau, why they don't think so, like us? Yeah. And this is a question I always asking myself. So maybe you have a better answer. I don't know exactly, but yeah, that's my question.
This is very simple. Okay, first, I'm not that kind of the funding agency. That's why I'm here. Okay, that's why I initialize everything here. But maybe we can try to answer your question in another way. You cannot change the politician. You cannot change the whole society, in particular the relation to the political election. I think that we discussed also, maybe not presented here. So we really get some influence. We say it's a bad influence, urgent influence. From every 2 years we have one election. So there's the set up the whole political environment or the atmosphere in Taiwan, particularly while discussing everything, okay, including the net zero. They were influenced by such kind of the political environment, and how to avoid that. We say how to avoid that, and our answer is exactly here. Just do it. What we are doing, and include more and more people, and you can change and get not influenced by the society, and you will become the very strong group, and you can influence the political group and the political decision. That's why we say that we started this group already 3 years ago. That times we have no budget, no idea, and right now I think that we get trust while discussing with many people. There are old people, including you, right? That times I try to include you to do the thing together. I think that this is the power, the empower from the bottom. And then as long as you become more and more powerful, I would not say powerful, because power is against, right? But more and more people to engage such kind of the activity, and you can really change the situation. Yeah, that is a simple answer. That's why I'm here. Okay.
I'd like to add a thought to that, maybe as a provocative hypothesis in response to what you said. Maybe there are many more people that are invisible but would like to do things differently. But it takes a lot of courage to kind of to do things differently to what you might have experienced as this is how things are done, or this is what is expected of me, or this is what the incentive structures tell me what I should do. So my experience of the last years is that so many people come kind of out of the bushes and say, finally somebody is doing this and that. I didn't know anybody is doing that. And so this assumption, why is nobody else, might overlook that there are many who need a bit of encouragement to see people who are going that path, but it might be an uncomfortable path for quite some time. Yeah.
Two very short comments. One thing is, if you work together, you can empower each other, even with a different knowledge. The second thing, I think, also maybe go back to the previous page, if possible. So I think here, the connecting, connecting interdisciplinary scientists working together to get the science right. I think we need to get the science right. Not only my science is right. This is not easy. So on the one hand, you need to engage together. On the other hand, you need also to make the science right and interdiscipline. Science is also the best basis to get the consensus or to get the trust. Without the science, without the evidence, there's only opinion, only the political position. I think that's why we also need to do the research, not only to please each other, okay? We are not a political group. In some sense, it could be also become a political group, but not right now. So, okay, good, that's all, yeah.
Just one comment. I think if I understand correctly, the part where you're referring to get the science right is what type of science we want to create, right? Is what this? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. In this process of getting the science right, I think one of the most important things to remember is that we first have to understand then how is the science going to be used? What type of problematic are we covering? And that's why we come back again to the stakeholder engagement. So before we even produce results, we want to understand why and how these results are going to be used for better climate change adaptation. So when we look at creating the science, the first step should be how are we going to go out there and understand what is needed? What type of stakeholder engagement are we gonna use? How are we gonna get this information from the users? Does somebody have some comments to this regarding stakeholder engagement, and how would you like to go out there and understand the needs of the users?
One comment on the get the science right. I think so we are not, sometimes we cannot get the science right. Maybe we cannot find the science right sometimes, but at least we can find the science acceptable, okay? Maybe, or comfortable, maybe. I think there's also different level with agreement. Not necessarily find only one science is right. I'm physics, but for physics, only one science, right? Okay.
And I want to add something. I would be very cautious with the techno determinism. Is that how we say it? Science and scientific and technological determinism kind of thinking. And I think that we don't want that here, right? And getting the science right also means that the ideology behind the science, what type of ideology is embedded in that type of science? I guess that's something I have been thinking about, but no answer. Yeah.
If I can just step in here just for a second. I think that's a very important discussion here. And I know among social scientists, there are always two camps. The realists who are saying science is a universal exercise to find out the truth. And then we have the social constructivists who say science is just a social construction like anything else. And to be honest, I think if you take that social construction view, basically we will lose in any kind of discourse. Because then everything is relative. And then any opinion has the same level as scientific evidence. And I think we should be very careful about that. And I think that's what you were saying. But what we need to make sure is that the original way that we thought about science, that the world is deterministic, that if A, then it's B, and we have to make sure that everybody understands if A, then B, we now know that's not true. And that is, of course, a major challenge to science, even the physical science or chemistry, or whatever you talk about, natural science. Well, we now know the world is basically stochastic. And that means if A, there's a probability of B, another probability of C, but there is an exclusion of E. And when we do public participation projects, we try to have scientists say, in this specific topic, there are a whole set of assumptions and properties that we know for sure. So, second law of thermodynamics or something. Well, it's basic. I mean, we know it's true anywhere. And if you deny that, you're really on the wrong side. And we can say it's absolutely true. There is a whole set of properties where we can say there's a very high probability, but there is still a possibility it's not true. But it's better to go with that than to go with another alternative. It's like playing Russian roulette. If you want to take one bullet or three bullets, you probably do one, because that's higher probability that you survive. And there is something that's possible, but very unlikely. And that's something which is very interesting, because that's a realm of uncertainty, where you can you have opinions whether you want to be, looking for the possible and daring for this, partly what you said, or you say, I only go with the most likely. And then there are things that are just absurd. And very often we can see in public debate that a lot of people come with absurd opinions because they've seen them on social media. And they say, okay, well, you know, we talk CCS here. In Germany, it's a big issue. Oh, this is poisonous. See, you know, CO2 is going to kill us immediately if it's been leaked. Well, that's absurd. And so I think it's very important in sense of dealing with stakeholders and dealing with public to make that distinction, to say, well, there are some things are pretty certain, and, you know, don't even discuss them. It doesn't make any sense. Physics, you cannot negotiate with physics. Secondly, you know, with climate skeptics and so on, you can say no. I mean, it's very clear. There are things that are highly probable, and it's good to think about that. And there's things that are possible. We might even try to push them. And there are things that are absurd. And that helps to set the stage. And it really has a strong integrative power, because if you have different stakeholders, they have different interests. And if you have a specific interest, you like to bend the truth, because you want to have your interest run the world, not the truth behind it. And so it helps you to have scientists there to say, okay, well, we really acknowledge, we respect your interest, but what you think is true may not be true. And there are other stakeholders who have different views, and science can help you to order this, whether it's really a true statement, or it's highly probable, or it is possible. And that helps very much to structure the discourse. And I think that's where I think the role of the scientist is, in that sense, is to make sure that, you know, we are finding common ground on the base of good evidence.
I have two comments, but we can give the microphone to the
Point of view, I want to echo Ren, because my thesis is about trust. So let's talk about trust in social science opinions. When we talk about trust, we must to differentiate from confidence. What are we talking about? What is trust? Trust is not about something for sure. Trust is about something I have to take a risk. I have to take a risk and to depend on you. Let's think about in our public policies, how many things are for sure. Not so many things for sure. We have to trust experts. Let me, it's not always experts give our answers correct. Sometimes we trust people for the same value, for some connection between relationship. So I want to echo you from another side. Yes.
Thank you for the input. I have two comments that I want to link the earlier discussion, that this climate service step development, you can apply it beyond science. If you're doing an interdisciplinary project, you can use it. But as what Professor Tai asked at the beginning, that, yeah, but how about the policymakers? So you can also have these steps co-develop with them. So you can see in these steps, you see the government, national, local level, they are in this process. And when I was hearing from your discussion in each group, there was really key discussion here in the group that just presented. They say, why at the beginning we set the goal of 20 gigawatt as the goal? And then you start to put the solar panel on someone's backyard and roof. Of course, they start resisting. And this is a conversation. Imagine you have these steps happen in these, let's say, governmental agencies. They realize these steps. Then maybe they will do also their policy differently. And then they will do the transdisciplinary science like the way we develop the steps in science and also in this public policy and decision-making process. And this is, we start from today. So I hope that you will take these steps And then you will bring these in the next possible setting. Then you do these steps together with the stakeholder. Your stakeholder could be community level, could be decision maker at the governmental different agencies. And then to do these steps, that these conversations that happened, they had to happen again in different settings. So they realized at the beginning, they set the process wrong. They have to reorganize the steps. And that's the key point of the exercise.
I would still like to say something on your question because I liked it very much. Like, what did we get out of these 50 minutes in the end? And I would just like to say, I feel my sensitivity has increased through listening to you because it's the first time for me to be in Taiwan. And coming here, I really didn't know how much of what I experience is relevant or connected or not connected to the reality that you are facing here. And so I'm very grateful for these 50 minutes just to have a deeper sense for what you are facing, how on the one hand similar and at the same time also different the challenges are that you're facing here in the Taiwanese context. So thank you very much for your openness and thank you for that question.
Any more? Yeah.
What I want to say is that I think what we are doing today is a must, is required, but is insufficient. As you point out at the very beginning, we should cooperate to be inclusive for as diverse stakeholders as possible. But for example, what we have here is a comfortable zone. Okay, although I always try to be challenging, but I've never been, when we face challenges, some of the challenges are rational, some of the challenges are irrational. But irrational challenges could be more touching to people. And that's the most difficult part, but also very important part, but we need to, to take into consideration seriously. So I just want to point out that this is a very good start, but it's far from enough. We must have the courage to step out, to reach people who we think are, they don't make sense. But they can change people, they could be convincing, although they don't make sense. And that's the problem we have to face.
You just assign yourself a job.
I totally agree with you.
So thank you so much for that comment. That, I think, it's related a little bit to what Professor Ren just said. Like sometimes there's people that might have these ideas that we believe they're absurd, but it's because they've been false affirmed. But this doesn't mean that these stakeholders shouldn't be engaged in the climate services process. We need all voices and we need as scientists to create platforms for dialogue. It's not only to create a climate service, but we offer also a platform for stakeholders to engage with each other. And I think that's something that we did today. We were doing an exercise, but we were also doing a type of stakeholder engagement in which you are listening to your colleagues, also all of them belonging to the science group, but within science of different groups of science. So you're listening to the ideas of other scientists. This is very important. We should always consider, we should have the courage, as you mentioned it, to go out and engage people we don't want to engage. This is very important in the climate services process, and we should always keep it in mind. And this is exactly what's gonna get science right, make science better. This is what's gonna really change the perspective of people to better adapt to climate change. I think one of the processes in climate change adaptation is not only implementing measures, but also a change in perspective, a social change in perspective, that everybody's on board the same boat. Do we have more comments? Do you have maybe doubts of the process? Something you would like to point out?
I would just like to comment on this process as well. I'm sure a lot of people in this room have probably had work published and have gone through peer review. And this was almost like a pre-review where you had the ability to talk about things that perhaps you have your expertise, but I'm sure a lot of people philosophize outside of their expertise. And if they're in a professional setting, they may not have the inbuilt trust or the confidence to talk about things they have philosophized about outside their expertise. So this kind of forum allows for a very comfortable, calm setting where you can bring in your expertise, your professional expertise, but also talk about things that you have thought about independently in a very comfortable, safe way. So it's been a very inspiring, insightful process. I think a lot of my group members have also agreed on that. They've commented on that here and there. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think just to echo a little bit on that, I think that's the first step of transdisciplinary science, to actually go out and start engaging your colleagues and talk about stuff that you never talked about before, to be uncomfortable, outside of your comfort zone, out of your knowledge area. And that's exactly the first step, the first building block in transdisciplinary science. And that's something that we have been trying to do at the Climate Service Center Germany since many years. And what I've seen since I arrived 5 years ago, I come from the natural sciences side. And for me, it took me a while until I started understanding what the social scientists were saying, what the climatologists were saying. But in the end, after dialogue and dialogue, after many years, everybody understands what the others are capable of doing and how you are able to support each other. And this is very important. We shouldn't forget it. And I think it's the first step before even engaging stakeholders. You engage your colleagues.
And I have the two more remarks. The one is that the reason why we really want to do this almost 2-hour workshop with you is that we think we can still influence each other, influence you. So those who, for example, already got a funded project from the ministry, from the National Science and Technology Council, you are at the beginning of your process. You already got the funding. You are at the best position to see which steps you're missing, no matter stepping outside of your comfort zone or target on the user group that you want to make changes, and then to make those steps in the next 4 years. And those who haven't got a project, but you're about to write a research proposal, you're about to have the next stakeholder workshop, then which are the steps that you can take it up? And so that's what we'd like you to take home and see what you have learned. And you can still implement them. You are in the best timing. The best timing is now. And then the second main message is what Daniela remind us that's the key message we want to bring as Garrix here, is that we are talking about different kind of topics: sustainable development, climate change, adaptation, and net zero. And you may have different other background that you apply this. And then there's also echoing what Professor Ren was saying, that there are certain truth and pathway that we have to keep reminding the world that which direction we have to go. We have to stay with them. And that's what we want to bring you, is this climate resilient development pathway, is that you will have people who say, yeah, but my opinion is equally important. And then my topic is also very important. But there's one fact that we have to remember, is that if we are not staying on this net zero path, if we are not keeping this goal of global warming under 1.5 degree, normally we are doing any kind of SDG project or climate change adaptation project, we will not be able to reach the goal. If we are reaching, for example, the 4-degree warming, there are not enough adaptation options to really adapt to the 4-degree warming world. So we have to stay on this path. So these measures and these thinking have to be in line with all this net zero thinking. And that's the key point that we want to bring, that we should integrate all these topics. No matter later on you will get that from the society, from your colleagues, from the politicians, then you have to make sure that you are integrating in this climate resilient pathway. And then we are all actually having the goal. The same goal is to reach this pathway. So that would be the concluding remark from Daniela and from us all.
Okay, we still have 5 minutes if there's one last question. or one comment, something you would like to share? Now is your time. Yes, please.
Thank you. So I want to give the feedback is that I really, in personal, really appreciate for the whole process because I also get some different knowledge from our group. We have got the labor issue and also the modeling group. So during this whole process, I'm thinking that Dr. Huang, you mentioned the different level of the stakeholder, which will be really a crucial issue because from the member, we got the really strong feedback from the user, like from the labor. If we want to follow the policy, if one, for example, a really practical example, we cannot turn on the air condition in if the temperature is lower than 26 Celsius degree in some work area. So we want to save the carbon, but the labor will face the really challenge and hard and tight work environment. So sometimes during the whole process, we include the different stakeholders. We got the insightful idea from the different spot. So I want to show my feedback. I really appreciate. I would definitely bring this back to our community to see if we can get the feedback from the local, for example, fishermen. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for this example. I can actually add on to that. Before I arrived in Taiwan for this forum, I was 2 weeks in Tokyo that I'm working with the hospitals there to get the hospital emission data to analyze this impact-based threshold. And then we were discussing actually one thing, because right now many countries have actually energy conservation policy. And these policies are never impact-based. What does it mean? Is that they set certain policies, such as you are not allowed to turn on the AC until end of the May. But recent years, there are heat wave days happening already at the beginning of the May. They actually increase the mortality and the ambulance transport. So we are actually right now trying to find the threshold through the public health data to find out that you should actually set the thermal comfort of your group, laborers, pregnant women. In University Hospital Hamburg, they found the threshold for the pregnant women to determine the preterm labor. So these kind of different thresholds should be the real goal for your policy. You should introduce this so when I already reached the thermal comfort level threshold, I can turn on the AC. Not until end of the May, they are not allowed to turn on the AC because they increase the risk. And this is the part that science can support it. We show them the number, they see the peak of the mortality rate in May, early heat wave days, they realize their policy was wrong and they are changing their policy. So this is the part that this can support. And this, we call them impact-based threshold to support the policy making and decision making. So good that you mentioned this example. Yeah.
So with this, I think we're on time, perfectly on time. So I want to thank you all so much for having the courage to engage each other. And please write to us. We're available for any questions you would like to have, any support you would like to have. We're open to further discussion. So that's our contact data if you want to contact us. Thank you so much for the opportunity that you gave us here to share with you. And we're looking forward to more cooperation. Thank you so much.
So the next session is knowledge exchange like we had yesterday. This is a shared talk by from the pilot project of the Social Science Research for Taiwan Net Zero Pathways project. And today we have Professor An-Ting from National Zhengzhi University. And it's again moderated by Professor Daixing Shenlao.
Okay, thank you, Rhea. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the knowledge exchange session. Actually, yesterday we've had two teams, the Just Transition team and the Integrated Modeling team introducing their works, especially about the issue, what's our major challenges in the Taiwan context and how the teams adjusting these challenges. And today we are going to have the third team, the Renewable Energy Policy and the Spatial Planning team, led by Professor Cheng An-Ting. Yeah, Professor Cheng and all team members have spent lots of efforts in this issue. And actually, yesterday, the discussion has touched the renewable energy policy and spatial planning issue a little bit. But it's a pity that yesterday we don't have even enough time to talk about that in detail. And today we have more time, and we have the team, the whole team here, so we can talk about this issue more in depth. And for me, the renewable energy policy and spatial planning issue are one of the most critical issues in Taiwan in terms of energy transition, net zero transition, and sustainability. And as you know, there has been a very, very heated debate in the Taiwan society about the land use conflicts and the associated sustainability issues. And I also believe that Germany, as a pioneer in energy transition, has experienced such a debate in the last maybe 1 decade or more than 1 decade. So today, I also would like to invite our international guests to adjust or to offer the insights of the German experiences, how Germany adjusts to tackle these issues. Anyway, later, after Professor Chen's presentation, all the comments and feedbacks are highly welcome. Thank you, and thank you, Professor Chen.
Thank you, Professor Tai. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me here. Today, I think I'm just the representative of this team. We have a team and dealing with the integration of spatial planning and the renewable energy development in Taiwan. And our team member actually, many of our team members actually here, Professor Wang Xiaowen, Professor Zhao Ziyuan, Professor Lin Shiyuan, and Ms. Chen Yuping. Okay, I don't think this is a very good time to have this kind of discussion because it's very near the lunchtime. Okay, so I think everybody looking for your lunchbox, so I will try to make as short as I can. But I like to tell a story because yesterday some people were very curious about the land use conflict. Yes, that is the point our team like to deal with. Before we touch the point, we better have some very, very simple background understanding about land use planning, spatial planning in Taiwan. Actually, we just introduced a new spatial planning system, or you can say the spatial planning system in Taiwan just in transition. The new systems will try to deliver their power to sectoral policies and the local people. But before 2016, actually Taiwan was a very typical development state. That means central government holds most power for planning permissions. And you cannot have a planning project unless you got the approval from central government. But we are changing. We like to deliver this power to department and also to local people. But we are still learning because we just changed this in around 8 years ago. There are a lot of things we need to learn. But on the other hand, we know we got a big achievement of renewable energy development over the last 5 years. How can you imagine that we can have a big achievement in only 5 years? Our government now try to promote renewable energy development since 2018. And now this is 2023. Wow. In 5 years, they predict that they want to get a big achievement, 20 gigawatts. And also offshore wind, 5.6 gigawatt. For many countries, they like to achieve these goals in 20 or 30 years, but we brief it shorten this in only 5 years, 5 to 8 years. So I think, not so surprisingly, most conflict happened during this. And our teams collect some problems we encounter. At least they are about the legal system, because it's come so fast, and our legal system needs to be adjusted, actually. And the suitable research, not yet. Not yet, because government, 5 years ago, government like to promote this, and they just gone. They just gone without too much delay or too much evidence supported. And also this happened very reasonably happened on the land use conflict, because every people argue that this land is good for blah, 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 this land is good for energy, this is good for economic development, and this land is good for farming. Okay, so how to coordinate this? And for some special people like Aboriginal tribe, they have different cultural shock also need to be taken into account. Or you cannot have a good communication with this kind of people with different culture. And then also about marine spatial planning. So from the legal system, sectoral development strategy, cross-sectoral governance, and spatial place, and spatial people, and also MSP. All these 5 dimensions are the points in this research. So it's quite big, and thanks to our partners' effort. We try to do something. We already have several government policies undergoing, from the farming land policies, spatial planning policies, and the industrial land policy, and also renewable energy siting policy. But these policies only gone through the policy-making process within department. And there are quite few evidence supporting this. We must understand the difference from the scientists and the politicians. Department policy, very, very target-oriented. They already set up their target and then come back to write down what they are going to do. So they have their target first, and then come back, they generate their action plans. But scientists like us, at least I pretend as a scientist, we prefer that we can better have some knowledge, and then we try to generate knowledge through evidence, and this evidence can be neutral. You can make a final decision, fine, but basically you need a platform, and this platform must be provided by scientific evidence. So our teams try to fulfill the gap between the policy and the knowledge. And we try to make a big structure like this. And hopefully we can deal with the 5, as I said, 5 points, main points, and engaged in spatial science, policy sectoral strategy, and also this have some communication with the local people, then feedback to the institutional design and the legal system. Okay, this is our proposal, something. And we just started this project only 3 months, and hopefully we can generate. But before I ask questions and like to listen to your experience, I can give a very, very short case to make you understand the conflict. Right. This is a place in Pingdong, very, very south part of Taiwan. And the Ministry of Economic Affairs like to promote this solar powers applications on artificial forest. They think artificial forest should be the good place, because artificial forest, the main purpose of this forest is for economic use, right? They cut down every 20 years and then rebuild, replant this forest. So it's good, they said it's good. And however, you can see this. Originally, all this space used for forest, but now some place brown zone be cut down and then offering for renewable energy. For economic sector, they think this is reasonable policy. However, for local people, no, this is not good. And even the agriculture sector, they think, no, this is not good, because they prefer to keep a forest. Right, but they don't have any negotiation platform, and there is no policy that can coordinate with these two different sectors. So from the sectoral, cross-sectoral conflict, and also the conflict happened vertically. This is what happened in Taiwan. So I'm coming here to listen to you, that to ask every people participate in your country or your experience. Your countries have renewable energy target, and how this target happen. And also, you experience this kind of conflict in space, especially farming land and energy development, and how you deal with this. I think that I give you this a very basic introduction in brief. So I listen to you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Cheng. And now we together sit on the stage, okay? Okay, so any feedback, suggestions, comments?
Rodrigo?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to answer your question. So in the case, for example, of Germany, I'm not an expert in renewable energy, but what I've seen is that there is challenges when building, for example, wind turbines. There's a lot of resistance sometimes in certain areas regarding the wind turbines because of the noise, or because some of the people think they killed a lot of birds and bats. One of the steps that it's done, it's always to do an analysis around the area where they want to put the how do you call them, the generators, and they always do an analysis regarding the species that fly through that area, et cetera, et cetera. But I think we will always have this kind of conflicts when we have a change. Now, there's always going to be some sort of resistance. I cannot, in this moment, give you one solution, but it really made me think about the problem we have back home.
Can I ask you questions? When there is a conflict between the wind farm and the local communities, who will be in charge of the communications to try to resolve this conflict? Is it government, central government, or federal government, or local government, or they just negotiate each other themselves? Do you know about this? Okay.
No, I'm not sure.
Thank you anyway. Thank you for your feedback.
Yeah, good question. Yeah.
Is it so?
So I'm from Australia, which has the exact opposite problems that Taiwan has. So Taiwan's issues are around spatial planning and where to put renewable energy, but the grid connections are very easy to do here. In Australia, a lot of the discussion is around how to actually power, to connect up the renewable energy sites. So we don't really have a problem with where renewable energy will be placed. We have set out renewable energy zones, which have been established by either the federal or the state government, that they will help develop grid lines to the renewable projects. The biggest policy conflict is probably between renewable energy policy and mining policy, because we have Australia is a net energy exporter. So a lot of our policies around energy are to develop gas sites, to develop coal sites. They're still being developed every day, every week. New gas sites and coal sites are being developed. And so there's a big issue around, should we put a mine there, or should we put renewable energy there? We have similar problems with wind as well. People are NIMBYs, not in my backyard. They don't like the look of big wind farms taking away from the beautiful Australian landscape. But that is, I think, becoming a smaller contentious topic.
Okay. Can I also ask, in Australia, and you said it sounds like the most communications between developers and the community. So what's your government's role in this kind of communication?
So the state government usually looks after renewable sites and a lot of the development, environmental development. They will step in if something is becoming too contentious, if it can't be negotiated between the local community and the developer. A lot of the time, the state government, because they tend to build in renewable energy zones, so there's less of a conflict than perhaps 10, 15 years ago, but I was probably too young to know what the situation was like then.
I envy you. You're still very young. Okay, I think I agree with you that the communication should happen between the developers and the community. But in Taiwan, there's a very special feature from the Western country, including Australia. That is, our central government is the biggest developer. So this makes the communication cost huge, because you need from the central government communicate with the fisher and the farmer. And people prefer this kind of model because in our culture, we trust government, or we rely on government to help us to make the final decision. Even the decision, sometimes I'm not happy. We don't trust the private company. But we are changing now. Some local community now, they can trust NGO. So we have some NGO partner here. So we are still learning. We try to advise the central government that you better to backward become a game ruler maker, not the player in this. And then lead the private sector under a good regulation, a good game rule, to negotiate with local. But I think it's still a lot of room to improve, actually.
Okay, Professor Ren, please.
Well, thank you very much. This was a very interesting presentation, and it does echo, as was already mentioned, also the situation in Germany about local opposition against wind farms, but also against external solar installations. The one thing that works very well in Germany is benefit sharing. So in that sense, you get local community to get some of the revenues or even the people. And so you say, okay, as the central government or a big supplier for energy comes in, but that institution then promises the community, well, we'll build this wind farm or we build this solar but you will benefit from this, and either that all the residents are co-owners and you can very cheaply buy stocks, and then that of course creates ownership. And we know it's not the money really, it's not that people really feel money, but you're now owning the facility, co-owning it. And that has a strong emotional aspect to it. And it's not the big government imposing something on it, but it's our utility now. And that has changed the game in a sense. And a lot of communities have gone through this process, and there's a lot of good evidence that public opposition has considerably decreased if that option of benefit sharing had been offered to them. Is there anything similar here in Taiwan that you offer either the communities or the residents some ownership, and that may have eased some of the opposition?
Good, thank you. I agree with you at all about only if there is a beneficial project for local community, then there is a possibility that this may come true. So our government also to try to offer some beneficial support, not only for money, but also for social support for farmers and the fisher. But we encounter a very special issue that in most cases, the owner, property owner, and the user different. So owner very happy because our government like have some subsidies to them, and you can have revenue every year without any work. only offered for solar power. However, the user worry about this. So I agree with you, not only for the beneficial project, but also for the social support. Because for user, I don't have this property, I don't have this land. And now, I'm encountering losing the job. So I worry about this. So I fight against this project. So I think this is the way we need to think about in the future. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Huang-Lachmann.
Thank you so much. I also want to echo what Professor Ren said. I actually visited and also brought students to visit different kind of renewable energy sites in Germany. And there are some with the resistance strong or weak, and some they are actually part of the shareholder. And I noticed the difference. Those renewable energy side that have the conflict is that they really receive some kind of top-down policy that the farmers got a notice from the government to say, hey, we notice you have a piece of land lying around. We are going to put so and so many solar panels on your land as a top-down policy. And then they start to question back to the state government to say, you have so many governmental buildings, roof space, why are you putting on my land? And then the difference, but with those communities, they are happily, or farmland, they are happily to install those solar panels in their own land or roof, is that they were able to be part of the shareholder. So for example, of course, in the case of they own the land, then they can be the shareholder. But if they are just the citizens of some facilities lying around, they can also join as a shareholder. And they even open up a kind of business called, I think it's called like a ecotourism. So if you go to some small towns, that you can pay roughly €5 of entrance, and they will hire the local citizens to be a tour guide to explain to you the history of the town where there used to be bunkers and how they put up the solar panel. And those, so to make sure those citizens or the users who they don't own the land, but they can have job opportunity, they have some sort of incomes. And then that's also to make sure that different level of the users, they are part of this shareholder of this business. They treat like a business model. And I found that there's a difference between the one with resistance without. Yeah.
Thank you. Can I ask your question in briefly? Okay, first about the panel on roofs. I think that this is very important because panel on roof, everybody happy. So our government also got a big achievement on this. And now around 40% of solar power's systems relied on the panel on the roof. Okay, and the second is about we need to offer some more support, social support for this users. And this is why the government now announced that they will have some like a national project for a spatial district. And within this district, the government will offer the social support. They will help you transfer your job. Oh, if you still like to do farming or fishing, then we can try to find out the good location, the new location that matches your profession. So I think the government noticed this problem and try to do something for this. But the problem is because all the project is so fast. It's too fast to make every single step perfectly. I think this is a problem, too fast.
Okay, thank you. May I invite Yu Ping? You must have a lot of on-site observations. So what's your perspective toward this issue?
Right.
First of all, thanks for the international inputs. I'm with Cheng, Professor Cheng's team, and we actually have two kind of actions going on. The first is more like a research purposes, exploring the unknown, exploring what others that we haven't been touched by the government. Is there any kind of solution that really lies that we wanted to start from bottom up, starting from asking the communities to do it? So it's basically small, right? I think it's roughly mentioned in this research topic. But the other thing is we were trying to assist the government with the current pathway, adding on whatever we can to try to persuade the government to be more reflective, more responsive to the government, to the public's expectation. At the moment, the public probably are not really asking for active involvement because they haven't been an experience of it, but they are very skeptical in the locals. We've never heard of any community that's willingly supporting and already involving in a community-based energy generation. So that's a problem. Whenever there's some people, some group of people who wants to do this, they would find they are facing a huge set of obstacles in front of them. That means the current policy is not really designed for them. There's no room, no real room for the community-based energy. That's why people have no way to learn or to get a hand on what's really on. And I think we've been trying to convey this message to the government, and with small effort, small result, I think. And on the other hand, we were trying to persuade the government and the big developers of how they should behave. Well, that might be for a certain timeline still be the main arena, but then there should be something that's fundamentally changing. Yeah.
Okay. Ria, do we have another 2 or 3 minutes, or we are running out of time?
It's lunch break, so if anyone is willing to wait a bit, we ask them.
Okay. Any comment? Dr. Zhao.
Yeah, actually, I just want to send a question for Professor Ren, because as of what I know, that in the citizen assembly in Germany, there's a kind of like a decision is that the government should be allocated 2% of the land for the wind and the solar development. It's kind of like being build out the social license for this kind of upscale renewable energy rollout. But as far as I know, the solar energy package was proposed by the Ministry of the Economic Affairs and the Climate Change in Germany. They're still facing some kind of challenge with the Ministry of the Agriculture and the other kind of departments. So in your perspective, that's kind of like when we talk about this kind of the solar package discussion in Germany right now, is there anything that we can learn from that kind of the package, that kind of the strategy, as far as you had heard some challenges we're facing in Taiwan?
Okay, Professor Ren.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, again, we also face problems. I mean, it looks like, the Germany is as a role model. It's not, very clearly. And we also have a lot of trouble now siting wind farms and siting solar panels outside of roofs. There are a couple of potential solutions which might even be interesting also for the Taiwanese policymakers. The first one is we found out that people who are already fairly affluent have already, when they build new houses or rebuild the houses, have put solar panels on the top of the roof. The middle class and lower income classes do not have the money to do that. So we now have a model that has been already introduced almost a decade ago, but didn't fly at that time, but now it seems to get more popular. That's contracting. And that may be an interesting thing also for Taiwan. It's companies come in and they build your solar installation on top of your roof or even on the facade, so you can do it even in big cities. You don't have to pay anything, but they, get the energy, and you get a specific percentage of the revenues. So in a sense, it's a win-win situation. The contractor comes in. It doesn't mean you have to invest your own money. You get something done, and you may even get a better roof or something else. So that seems to fly right now quite well. So that's one issue. A second issue, which I think is important, and because it was asked before, in Germany, if you have any kind of regenerative energy system, it goes through a licensing procedure. So the government is basically the one that licenses this. You have a proposer who does it, and then you have, of course, a community who is being the host. And that licensing procedure is, extremely structured into details, and sometimes it's not very good in terms of public engagement. It prescribes an inquiry, but that inquiry is usually counterproductive because you have the proposer and the regulator, on the top. You have the public sitting in the back, and the public knows the only way to make sure that the thing is not being built is to make as much noise and to make as much nuisance as possible. So if you crash the windows and if you throw tomatoes, that's probably a way to get away from that plan. So it's just no discourse. It's really, trying to incite riots. And a lot of publics know that. So even if they're normally very peaceful, they're trying to orchestrate a big opposition. So this type of inquiry is really counterproductive. But it's required by law, so we cannot do with it. So what we have done in the past was that we had citizen assemblies running before the inquiry. So we asked the randomly selected citizens to come together, to look through the plans, make modifications, and so on. And then when the inquiry was coming up, we had those citizens sitting on front, not the experts and not the regulators. So the neighbors were sitting up there. And that made a big difference because you're not throwing eggs at your neighbor. And in that sense, underneath it, when we looked through it and we have seen all the pros and the cons, and for us as citizens, we made that decision. It's a totally different atmosphere. And I think that's, again, coming back a little bit to what I've said in the beginning. If you have co-ownership over the process, which goes back to procedural justice, which you discussed yesterday, and to have the feeling of agency, we can do something about it. We can be part of the siting procedure. We are part of the monitoring. That helps a lot if people feel they have agency, and then they are more likely to accept something that makes sense to them.
Okay, thank you for the German experiences. Yep.
Can I answer to
yeah.
Dr. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Rand. I agree with you about the co-ownership. I think this is a good mechanism that to encourage that beneficial mechanism to running and encourage people. So we are also try to introduce a new system in Taiwan. We call it a green credit. As long as you can have this kind of renewable energy development in your county or city or town, then you will have a credit. And you can use this credit. The green power is very different from the normal powers because a lot of industry, they relies on this, especially for the project RE100. The supply chain that ask their manufacturing producers need to use the green power. Right, so I think this is a sort of this kind of beneficial mechanism to share the benefit to local people and also local government. They try to get everyone involved in this net zero approach. Right, so this is what's happening in Taiwan, and thank you for your sharing. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Professor Cheng. We do run out of our time, so it's lunchtime. Let's close this session's discussion. Thank you so much, and thank you, Professor Cheng.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Thank you.